Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I am your host, the OT Astartes, and I have seen Transformers 1 and I was not disappointed. So, as everyone recommended it to me, I'm very careful for who I trust for reviews. So, I watched Chris Gore from Film Threat, I watched Chris Gore's review, and I watched Rodimus Primal's review as well. I waited for Friday Night Tights to review it, but no such luck yet. They're too busy with the Rings of Power. And the Critical Drinkers have not reviewed it, so I'd usually go by what those folks like to say. There were some of my generation that were a bit worried about the film. So hopefully this review will put those concerns to rest as it did for me. Now, I will criticise this film for some aspects of it, but the pros outweigh the cons. Get it? The writers seem to know most of the lore and all the continuities, as I spotted a lot of references, especially in the dialogue. So, Sentinel Prime. So, I was a bit worried about him at first, but I ended up liking him. In this film, he is... I'd compare him to Homelander. He's admired by all the citizens of Cybertron, but really he is a massive con. I like his character in this. I think he's got some very funny lines. He's got the same type of humour as Homelander, and he's got the same colour scheme as him as well. So, for the humour, some of the humour I did find a bit funny, like all the little references. So, on the dynamics of D16 and Orion Pax, so I was unsure of how this dynamic would work at first, but at first it's Orion Pax that's the rebellious one, and D16 that's all for Protocol. So I was unsure about this at first. I was a bit skeptical because I was like, it's meant to be Orion Pax is the good guy, but this kind of builds around Megatron's whole standards that he will have later on as Megatron. Next up, Arachnid. Now, I like that she has more of a prominent role in this film as Sentinel Prime's lackey. This reminded me a bit of Animated because they were both in the same show, and Arachnid was Elita 1, and I love the fact that during the final battle, Elita 1 got to have a mini fight with Arachnid, which reminded me so, as somebody who watched Animated, if for those who don't know, Black Arachnia used to be Elita 1, so that was a nice little treat for the Animated fans. But I do have to say, a bit of her design, so around her knee area, reminded me very much of Ear Spacers. I like how she was the eyes and ears of Sentinel Prime as well, and that she had multiple eyes not just on her front but on her back as well, at the back of her head. Really gave her that horror aspect as we've seen in Transformers Prime. I also like the soundtrack as well. I love how some bits of it were synthwave-esque and other bits of it were like Transformers Prime. There's literally a track in there with the same notes as Optimus Prime's theme in Transformers Prime. And I also noticed that the guy who did the soundtrack to TF1, Brian Tyler, really nice there. So the 13 original Primes are also a part of this story. Now, I love how they've been brought out from all the separate continuities. The one that looks the most loyal to his original design is Vector Prime. However, Megatronus Prime looks more like Tarn, so I haven't read much IDW. I have heard of Tarn, and I've heard that he's the leader of the Decepticon Justice Division, and they made Megatronus Prime look the same as Tarn. Now, on one side, you can see how this provides an inspiration for the Decepticons with the logo, but on the other side, they could have at least paid homage to the Bayverse and use a design similar to the Fallen in Revenge of the Fallen. I know it's not everyone's favourite film. And it's also kind of weird that he's the good guy instead of turning his back on the other primes like he's done in other continuities. Now, Alpha Trion is also a part of this film, but only for a few scenes. I feel as though he too should have had more screen time. Now, there have been a lot of cameos from the 13 original primes, but there were also cameos from multiple G1 characters. So, as I say, this is a reference spotter's dream. If you're a big fan of G1, a lot of G1 characters do make an appearance one way or another. Now, in the racing scene, there are a lot of characters, quite underrated characters actually. You see Override's name pop up, Silverbolt, Cliff Jumper. Wonder if he survives this time. A ton of characters are referenced in this scene. Now we have the Cybertronian High Guard, aka the G1 Decepticons. Now, as I say, lots of G1 cameos in this, and I love how they use the G1 characters as inspiration. I also like how they made Starscream the leader, and obviously he gets overthrown by Megatron. And of course, during that scene, we see the Megatron that we all know and love start to emerge when he almost kills Starscream and gets out that famous fusion cannon. Next up, we have Bumblebee. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of this character because some of his humour seemed a bit over the top, but I will say that I like how B works in a smelting pit, and I like that as a new idea. Now, Chris Hemsworth as Orion Pax stroke Optimus Prime. He is the perfect alternative for Peter Cullen. He really can sound like that wise, heroic guardian that we know Optimus Prime can be. Now, as for the animation style, it's beautiful. I don't like the designs, but I like the animation style. I found it very immersive, and my favourite location has to be Iacon City, because it feels like a utopia, but too perfect in a way. Another thing I want to point out is the TCOG storyline. So I was a bit frustrated about how our main characters don't have TCOGs, but later on you find out that Sentinel Prime robbed the miners of their transformation cogs, and obviously later in the film, Prime, and at the end of course, Prime gives everyone a TCOG and they can all transform and power up. And of course, this revelation acts as a precursor to the emergence of Megatron. And when eventually both Prime and Megatron emerge as the incarnations that we all know and love, the editing is beautiful in that scene. Like, it focuses on them both at the same time. We see them both powering up, and the fight between Prime and Megatron is glorious. Nothing but glorious. And I like how they've still given Prime his G1 axe, but I will say, I kind of think Megatron's tri-shot cannon thing is a bit too heavy on the arm. Like, I'd have thought that it would have weighed his arm down a bit. Can you imagine Megatron trying to fire a massive cannon being like, "Hold on, Prime, I need to lift my arm with this stupid cannon thingy. Honestly, whose idea was it? Out of all the things I could have had, you could have even given me a beard. Megatron with a beard would have been awesome." Now, another thing about this film is the Quintessons, and they have a really good backstory, and I love their presentation. The idea that the Quintessons and Cybertronians went to war is so exciting. And I love that Sentinel Prime lured the other primes into a trap and eventually killed them all. And obviously he works with the Quintessons, although he's more their puppet. And this is really new. I'd have loved to have seen an entire episode where the Transformers fight the Quintessons, like in the early days of Cybertron. Like, can you imagine with the 13 original primes? Maybe I'll do that one day. Now, as I say, I love this presentation. They look menacing. They look as though they could really F up Cybertron. But they were in it for one scene. Now, if they do make a sequel of this film, I'd love to see more of the Quintessons and have them versus the Autobots and Decepticons. Make it a triple threat fight. I do feel as though they could have had more screen time. And I noticed that their ship looks like the Nemesis from G1 and Beast Wars. But my main compliment about this film is Megatron. His journey from normal mining bot and friend to Orion Pax, I should say, to Megatron is well paced. So from the revelation that Sentinel Prime is manipulating everything, and eventually he has vengeance on his mind, he then gets the Cybertronian High Guard, takes over, and then some of them get captured by Sentinel Prime, and then by the end of the film, he ends up killing Sentinel. This is the first decent Megatron since Prime ended. So, one big thing that I didn't like was Elita 1 being a girl boss. So, the first instance is that when I feel as though she humiliates Shockwave by punching him in the eye. Although I did find that a bit funny because Shockwave's only got one eye. And one line that really had me face palming was when she says to Orion Pax that she's better than him in every way. But the writers kind of try and cover her ass by saying that she's better than him in every way apart from hope. That's the one line that dampened the pep talk scene for me. And if that wasn't in there, maybe I would have appreciated her a lot more. Because that's what Optimus Prime is. He is hope incarnated in the Transformers universe. So, as for my final thoughts on the film, it's really good. It's better than what I expected. The good most definitely outweighs the bad. Especially Megatron. I think he has to be the highlight of this film. Chris Hemsworth does a good Optimus Prime. And I would recommend this to any casual Transformers fans or anybody who at least wants to get into the Transformers. Simply explains Megatron and Optimus and well establishes that they are sworn enemies. And they most certainly know how to do a climax sequence. You will find a few things to nitpick at, but in the long run, this film is most certainly worth your time. So, yeah, I'd like to thank you all very much for watching this video, and I will see you all later. So, arigato and sayonara.